When you sat down to write, when you started to write, you probably didn't dream that all of this would happen.
No, I definitely didn't. I knew I was starting what I hoped was going to be a long book series, but I didn't imagine that it would ever be this successful, let alone having 2 films made, or eventually 3 films. So, no, it was beyond my wildest dreams, really. I was just pleased to have my book published in the first instance.
What were your aspirations? When you sat down to write, what was the motivation? What could you hope for? What were you hoping for at that stage?
I loved reading when I was a kid, absolutely loved reading, and I read all the time. But I'm very aware nowadays that the telly is so wonderful and film is so marvellous and internet. There are all these other things that children can do with their time. And so I wanted to write a book series that was so exciting and so funny and captures children's imagination so much that they wanted to read books as much as they wanted to watch telly. That was my small aim in writing the books.
So the book competing with the TVs, competing with the screen.
I was very aware of that, which is why I put in loads of pictures. I make it very visual. I don't dumb down in any way whatsoever with the ideas in the stories, but I try and make them as exciting and as funny and as many cliffhangers as possible, and very, very visual in order to capture children's imagination and their attention. Because children are more visual, I think, nowadays than they were when I was growing up, because they watch so much telly. So that's why I put in all those pictures, to make the book feel an exciting object and something that isn't schooly and old-fashioned. I want to make it relevant and exciting. I want them to feel positive about books, that they're a wonderful, exciting thing.
Now, when my wife was pregnant with my son, she was reading Chaucer in very old English.
Oh, yeah, Trollis and Crusade. Which one was she reading?
I don't know which one she was reading. When my son was born, she was reading...
Crusade, Trollis and Cressida. Chaucer wrote Trollis and Crusade, which is a version of Trollis and Cressida, yes, so I know all about Chaucer. Yeah.
Once my son was born, she was reading How to Train Your Dragon. Has it surprised you the effect this book has had, these books?
Well, you always hope that they will that they will resonate for people. That's what you want to happen. And I write them so that adults can read them aloud to children. I specifically write that with that idea in my head, so that I write them so that adults can enjoy them, I hope, as much as children. And as a result, they're sort of simple and complicated at the same time, because they can be enjoyed on these 2 different levels. So when I hear stories like that your wife is maybe reading them to her child, that's what I'm really hoping is going to happen. Because also that's the other thing, is if you read aloud to your child, it says to the kid, books are special, books are important. And you're sharing an experience with your child. You're very close to them, you're telling the story, and you're both enjoying it together. And that sends a very powerful message to the child that books are something special. So that's something that I'm particularly hoping is going to happen when I write the book.
Now you're very well educated. You've got 2 degrees, one master's degree. But you've obviously written this in a sense to draw children into literature.
Yeah.
And you're an ambassador for literature.
Yeah.
So do you relate to the struggle of learning to read?
Yeah, no, I really relate to that. I'm an ambassador for the National Literacy Trust, which is a sort of a campaigning body to get children reading. And that for me is part of the excitement of what I do, is getting children reading, as I say, in this age which is with so much film and telly about, and this because I think books are a very special medium, and that's why I don't want us to lose books. Film and telly, all the action happens out there, but when you're reading a book, it happens inside your head. So I think they're particularly good at creating empathy, sort of in a child. Reading is particularly good at creating, that thing of empathy, because it happens inside their head. So I really want the children of tomorrow to be reading, and that's part of why I write.
Your books have been translated into 37 different languages. You've sold 7 million copies, more than 7 million copies. As you've said, the third film is on its way. This is success. This is success. Is it what you thought it might be?
I think that you don't really think about that. I mean, or I certainly didn't. You don't really think of it like that. You just think about making the book as good as it possibly can be, and thinking about making the child laugh as possible, or to move the child. I think it's all about, you don't think about whether the book's going to be successful in that way. You just think about whether it's going to be moving, whether it's going to be funny, whether it's going to be exciting. And if it does connect in that way, well, then success, will follow. I'm a big believer in that. If it connects, but it has to connect. It has to connect, as I say, either to make them laugh, or to make them cry, or to make them scared, or to make them think. I mean, I think books have to do that in order for them to work. And if that happens, yes, then maybe it will be successful. But nobody goes into the writing business, or they really shouldn't, hoping to, make money out of it, or to kind of do well in that kind of way, because it doesn't necessarily work like that. You can write and do marvellous books, but if they find a small audience, and that's still, if they're finding a small audience and they're meaning something to that small audience, that's still just as important. So I think I've been very fortunate in the books reaching a wider audience. But that was almost an accident, I suppose. It wasn't something I intentionally set out to do, if you know what I mean.
It's a happy accident.
It's a happy accident.
You spent part of your childhood on a remote Scottish island.
Yes.
And how much of that is in the book, do you think?
Oh, no, that is, in the books, that is the start, the beginning, middle and end of the books, really. I mean, in the sense that it was the inspiration, because this was a very small island off the west coast of Scotland, where I went every holiday as a child, and we'd be dropped off by a local boatman and picked up again, 2 weeks later when I was very little. And there was nothing on the island. It was completely remote, and no houses and no supermarket, nothing on this island, no way of contacting the outside world. And this was the first place that the Vikings came to when they invaded Great Britain. It was the last place they left. So there was real Vikings who once upon a time would have lived on this island, and I used to play in their little ruined houses, and where real Vikings would have lived, and imagine what would it be like to be a Viking. And Vikings, of course, believed in dragons, and they thought they were real creatures that really existed. So it was entirely the inspiration for the stories. And this whole experience, extraordinary experience, is very much in the books. Because it was wilderness. I try and get that feeling in the books of the wonder of wilderness, of how extraordinary wilderness is and how precious wildernesses are, how we ought to be looking after them. And the dragons, I suppose, are symbolic of that, symbolic of wilderness and how we need to look after the creatures in this world and not let them go extinct.
It's a story of brain over brawn, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, among other things, yes.
Is there a part of you in that as well?
Well, it's a part of something that I think is very, as I've talked about the environmental message, it sort of sounds very serious, and I try and do this all with a light touch, but, there's a very strong environmental message, and there's a very strong message about pacifism, about using words, not swords. That message is very much in there. It's very anti, although it's about a war, the books are about anti-war. They're trying to, Hiccup is trying to be a different kind of hero. He's growing up in a world in which might is right, and he's a different kind of hero. He's ushering in a new age. So yes, I'm trying to present an idea of a leader who is a talker, a thinker, a brains person, rather than a warrior, really. A new kind of hero.
In September, the last in the series of books comes out, and we find out whether Hiccup can indeed save dragons.
The whole book series, I should have said, the book series started with the question, what if dragons really existed? And the whole book series is answering the question, what happened to the dragons? And can Hiccup save the dragons? And so, yes, in this last book, we find out the answer to that question, whether Hiccup can save dragons.
Do you already know the answer?
Yes, I knew the answer some time ago. I have to say, I wrote the answer to many books ago. In fact, I had the answer in my head even before I'd started the books. So yes, I have known the answer. But when you're writing a long book series, you only reveal little bits of what you know as you go along. So it may seem like I don't know. I hope it does seem like I don't know the answer as it goes along. But yes, I've known the answer since the beginning, really.
Do you or your assistant here, do either of you fear kidnap and torture to find the answer?
Well, actually, I'm not sure whether it would need kidnap and torture. My problem is I'm very indiscreet. So my problem is really keeping the secret. I mean, I shouldn't really be allowed out, frankly, because I might give it away. I just kind of have to be quite careful not to give it away in the next 6 months. Because yes.
And do you like a paper copy of a book? Do you think
a physical copy of a book? Yeah.
The whole e-reader thing, is that a red herring? Do you think that matters? Will that affect the quality of the experience?
Well, I never think that things are red herring. And that, I've talked about how we're competing with film and television, but I love film and television. I mean, I love the films that have been made out of my books, and I watch masses of telly myself. I mean, I love stories in any form. I just want the survival of this. So I don't see any digital. There's a tremendous place for digital books. Taking on books on holiday. It's very difficult to take 20 books on holiday. So from a practical point of view, I welcome digital books. Just as I also welcome audio books. My books don't have to be read in physical form. They're read brilliantly on audio tape by David Tennant, who brings a whole different quality to them because he does these magnificent voices. But I do care about the survival of a physical book, because I don't think you can really beat a physical book for just, it's so clever, isn't it? It's such a, it's there, it's on your bookshelf, and you know where you are in the story, and therefore apparently information goes into your head. Children remember things more clearly if they read them in book form than they do on a screen. There's been quite a lot of research
because of the physicality.
Because of the physicality of the book, and so it's quite interesting. So I want physical books to survive, and one of the things about children's books is that they, one of the great things that we can do with picture books, that's why I love putting pictures in, is that it can make the book a very beautiful physical object and something that you want to own and to have. And I think that's really important, I'm hoping, for the survival of physical books, is how lovely children's books can be. And I think we're focusing on that more in the children's book industry, on producing books that are lovely objects. And I'm hoping that that's going to help physical books survive. I think recent research has also shown that we are holding up the industry in because there was a time when people thought, digital books would sort of replace physical books, and recent research has shown that isn't true. It's the sale of physical books is holding up really well. So I'm very pleased about that.
My daughter learnt to read properly with How to Train Your Dragon, and far later than I was comfortable with, maybe age 11 or 12, you see, much later than average.
I'm a strong believer in that it doesn't matter when you learn to read or when you get excited about reading or turn into a reader. I think it doesn't matter I think it happens when a child gets into a book series or into a single book that they really connect with, and suddenly they can think, oh my goodness, books are wonderful things. There are magical things that are happening in books that I don't necessarily know about. And it can happen quite late because, of course, film is magically beamed into your head. You don't have to make that effort of decoding that you do with reading. And a child has to overcome that with a book. So sometimes that, the effort of doing that makes them think that books are boring and not for them. So you need one book or one book series that just says, aha, books are wonderful, and then they become a reader. And so that's what you're aiming to happen when you're writing a good children's book. And that's why I also write so that the books can be enjoyed by all ages, because you never know when that's going to happen. My books get read to 4-year-olds. I'm not sure, they're a bit scary for 4-year-olds, I'd say, but they do get read to 4-year-olds. But they get read independently by 11-year-olds, 14-year-olds. I get emails from students who are taking the whole series off to university with them. So I'm writing so that they can be enjoyed by children of all ages, because you never know when that's going to happen, and you want children to find books exciting, but it doesn't matter when that happens. That's right.
It sounds like you have come back from the audience backwards and into your writing. So you're thinking, who am I speaking to, and how am I speaking to them? Have you got any tips for new writers who are starting out?
Well, my first tip would be to read as much as you possibly can and as widely as you can, and different types of books that you might not necessarily think that you like, because it all gives you ideas for the way that stories are told. And so I would say that, read as much as you can, and all sorts of different, horror, history, all different kinds of books, so that it gives you, as I say, the idea, the way, the feeling for the way that different ways that you can tell a story. And I would say also, don't worry if you're copying, fan fiction. A lot of, I know this is a complicated area, but sometimes authors, when they start out, you're copying the work of authors that you enjoy. As long as you're not publishing it, that doesn't matter. You're just practicing and honing your art. So I would say practice masses. If you're a kid, don't think that you ought to be writing, proper long books as big and fat as that when you're, 10. You've got to go to school. You haven't got the time to do that. So it's all about just practicing short stories and, bits of stories. So yes, read, practice, copy. Those are the kind of, and think about, the way that, notice the way that people talk to one another. Listen for dialogue, and writers are often very good at noticing things. The way that people move, the way that things look, the way that people talk to one another.
So, the last battle in September. We're all looking forward to it. You're going to meet some of your readers today. Can you give us any taste of what we're expecting in September?
Well, without giving it away. Well, we're going to be expecting the answer to the question, what happened to the dragons? And can Hiccup, I don't know how he's going to do this. He's got to be made king, despite the fact that he hasn't got any of the lost things. It's a long story, but there are 10 lost things, and and he's all on his own, and he's on this island, and he has to, without a dragon or a boat, and he has to get to this other island without a dragon or a boat, and be crowned king without any of the lost things, and then he has to save the dragons from extinction. Small task, in one book, because it's the last battle between dragons and humans. So that's what he has to do. I can't tell you how he does it, because that would be giving it away.
Cressida Cowell, thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.